What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Eclectic Beard. This go around, we got Geography Now, Sweden. We're going to take and start this Geography Now journey, go through some of the countries in Europe they've looked at, and then we'll start looking at some of the cultures a little bit more in depth, because why not? I love to learn. Let's get into it.
Sweden. I don't have to give much of an introduction. I'm sure you've all heard of this one. We've scaled the treacherous Danish peaks of Møllehøj, stomached the ammonia-flavored Icelandic Hákarl, and our wallets were viciously attacked by Norwegian prices of anything. But now it's time. Welcome to the final boss of Scandinavia, Sweden. Ooh, it's hot. I'm all hot and sweaty right now.
You know the drill.
Oh yeah, okay.
Kick it.
Oh yeah, Noah's back, by the way.
Here we are.
Yep.
It's time to learn geography.
Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbs. You can get a Geography Now t-shirt or Geography Now merch at geographynow.com. Not selling out if it's your brand. Anyway, alright you guys, this is it. Our last Nordic country.
But what about...
You're a constituent.
But what about?
You're an unincorporated territory.
But what about me?
We already did your video, I even went there. Okay, anyway, I actually wanted to go to Sweden for this episode, but at the last minute, Sweden was like, dude, we're gonna close off our borders to anyone outside the EU. But you know how it goes. The show must go on. And if we can't go to Sweden, we're gonna bring Sweden to us, and in the best possible way, with real Swedish people. And I mean like real Swedes, not those 5th generation Minnesota Swedes that eat lutefisk once a year. And so with that, say hi to Jonas and Carolina. Come on in. Woo! Oh, yeah. I got 2 Swedes. So you guys are the real deal. Swedish, straight up, right?
I was born in Sweden and lived there for 10 years. And then my mom moved me to the enemy, to Norway.
Oh, so you're half Norwegian, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm from Skåne, so we might have some angry people out there claiming I'm Danish, but...
It was LA. You guys were the best I could find. So anything you want to say to the Swedish subscribers?
Nah, I'm excited for you guys to learn more about your country. Our country.
Again, I love the style, the way they do their videos, and this opening is just fantastic.
By the way, where are you guys from?
I'm from Helsingborg.
And I'm from Skellefteå.
Now, there are many ways you can divide Europe. You know, like you have the Mediterranean. Hey, tomato for sale, tomato. The post-Iron Curtain. The Balkans. But everyone knows the further north you go, things start to get delicious and sweet.
Anyway, let's look at the globe.
Sweden lies in the region of Scandinavia in northern Europe and is the largest of all the Scandinavian countries, the 5th largest in Europe and 3rd in the EU. The country is bordered by Norway to the west and north, and Finland in the northeast, separated by the Gulf of Bothnia otherwise between them. In this gulf, you can also find Sweden's 2 largest islands, Öland and Gotland. Otherwise in the south, the only other physical connection they technically have is with Denmark via the partially submerged and partially above ground Öresund Bridge that connects Malmö, the 3rd largest city, to Copenhagen. I'm trying my best with these pronunciations, bear with me. The country's largest city, though, and capital is Stockholm, located on the east side of the country, and it actually sits on 14 islands with over 50 bridges at the drainage of Lake Mälaren, with over 20 lakes and countless streams. This is why it is sometimes referred to as the Venice of the North. The country is divided into 21 counties, each abbreviated by...
That's a lot of bridges. Over 50 bridges. But it's funny. What's funny is, number one, it's the capital, but I'm sure it grew like it did because all of the canals and it being right there, it's perfect for trade. And all of those canals, all of those riverways and stuff like that leading back inland a little bit, it allowed goods to probably take and come from different places, or made it easier to take and kind of travel out. At least that'd be my guess. Could be wrong.
A letter or double letter known as a country code. For the EU statistical system, though, the counties are grouped into 8 riksområden, or national areas, to address things like population data and so forth, but they in themselves do not have any administrative function. Otherwise, if you ask a Swede, they might revert back to the 3 traditional lands of Sweden: Norrland, Svealand, and Götaland. Technically, there was a 4th, Österland, which was basically South Finland when it was under Swedish rule, but that term hasn't been used since the 15th century. Anyway, Stockholm is also the central hub of economic activity and transportation. The largest and busiest airport is Stockholm's Arlanda International, which, like so many European international airports, is located super far from the actual city. It takes a 20-minute express train or 45-minute car drive to downtown. The second largest airport, Landvetter International, is located in the second largest city, Göteborg, or Gothenburg for the misguided English speakers. Göteborg actually also has the largest shipping port in the...
Göteborg? That's how it's pronounced. I love the way these. I love the way language and way it looks like it's would sound, and the way it actually sounds completely different. Because yeah, Gothenburg would have been my first.
The country, and the largest in all of Scandinavia, taking in about a third of all Swedish trade activity. It lies on the Kattegat and Skagerrak, the shallow straits that open up Scandinavia to the rest of the world. With other major cities like Oslo and Copenhagen within radius, here about 70% of all industry and commerce through Scandinavia happens. It's a busy spot to say the least. Finally, the country has quite an organized system of roads and rail networks that more or less parallel each other. There are two main north-south highways, the E4 that hugs the entire Bothnia coast, and the E45, the longest road in the country that goes along the mountains inland from Göteborg all the way to the border with Finland in the north.
Also, it's important to note that Sweden claims to have the most islands out of any other country in the world, at over 260,000.
In any case, Sweden's domain wasn't always confined to these borders.
For starters, Sweden, being Scandinavian, obviously have Viking history. If you know anything about Vikings, you'll know that they went places.
They were literally in the Americas
They
500
went places.
years
That's
before
an
Christopher
understatement.
Columbus.
And when they couldn't conquer an area, they still left their mark somehow. Even the Hagia Sophia in Turkey has runic inscriptions hidden on it.
Oh, dude, that's pretty. That's quite a trek, to be honest with you. But that's crazy. They took and left the Vikings version of "We Were Here." Vikings.
It was like Viking graffiti, like Vikings were here.
On top of that, in the 1600s,
Oh,
Sweden
shit.
started to become a European powerhouse, and like many other countries, took an attempt at settling and colonizing places outside of Europe.
At one point, Sweden had fortresses and colonies in the Americas, Africa, mostly in what now is Ghana.
Further, which it's more, within Sweden, you even have a few micronations.
We don't have time to get into each of them, but they're pretty interesting. One of them was made as a protest by an artist to protect those wooden sculptures.
Anyway, the developmental structure behind Sweden has a lot of history behind it.
Like Visby on Gotland Island, probably the best preserved medieval city in Scandinavia.
The Old Town Stockholm
Oh, that
neighborhood.
looks fantastic. We are going to have to look at that place. Like that looks absolutely
On Gotland
fantastic.
Island, probably the best preserved medieval city in Scandinavia.
The Old Town Stockholm neighborhood of Gamla Stan was built as a fortress to protect against pirates.
Later on, one of your kings would actually become a pirate, but that's another story. In fact, the country has 15 UNESCO heritage sites, and actually, here's fellow geography Rebecca to explain a little bit more about the top notable sites of Sweden. Rebecca, take it away.
Hi everyone, my name's Rebecca, and if you're ever in Sweden, here are some of the most notable sites. There are plenty of notable castles, fortresses, and cathedrals, such as Drottningholm Castle, Gripsholm Castle, Örebro Castle, Visby Town Wall, Uppsala Cathedral, and St. Mary's Cathedral. Sweden also has the highest concentration of runestones in the world, with the most famous one being Rökstenen. There's also many historical Viking sites, such as Birka Viking Village, Trelleborgen, Old Uppsala, and Alestenar.
All of these places, like anytime I watch a video about any kind of country, number one, Sweden, I've always wanted to take and go to Scandinavian countries. I've always wanted to take and just, to be honest with you, just get outside the U.S., but there's some countries I've always wanted to go to. I've always wanted to visit the UK. I've always wanted to go to Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark. Like, I've always wanted to take and go. Iceland, I'll be honest with you, when I go to the UK, there's a good chance on my trip there, I might be making, before I see anybody in the UK, I might just wind up stopping in Iceland, just because, why not? I've always wanted to see the landscape there. I've always just wanted to take and try some of the cultural foods there, which I know a lot of the foods are kind of harking back to Viking settlers and stuff like that, but it's still just beautiful place. And all of the pictures that you see of like Norway and Sweden, and just it's the beautiful scenery, and the old architecture and everything like that. I've got to get out of the U.S. and do some traveling.
If you're looking for more excitement, check out the theme parks Liseberg, Gröna Lund, and Skara Sommarland. Notable museums in Sweden are the Vasa Museum, ABBA Museum, Fotografiska, and the Museum of Natural History. In Stockholm, you can find the newly renamed Avicii Arena. It also acts as the sun in the largest scale model of our solar system. Thank you, and I hope you
that's
come
cool.
to visit Sweden someday.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Speaking of Swedish places, like other Nordic countries, we have Allemansrätt allemansrätten, which is the legal right to roam anywhere in nature.
Have you guys ever taken advantage of that allemansrätten thing?
Nice.
You just like pick berries and like, hey.
Yeah, I mean, most places are owned by the country, so you're allowed to be there.
Can you just like walk in someone's backyard and be like, hey,
No.
allemansrätten?
No. It has to be
Preferably
public
not.
land.
Well, speaking of roaming in nature, there's lots to explore in Sweden, which brings us to... Now, in the Nordics, each country kind of has their own trademark physical trait.
You know, Norway has the mountains and fjords.
Denmark has the flat grassy farms,
Finland is the land of lakes.
and Iceland is basically just one big volcano.
And then you get to Sweden and it's like a little bit of everything. Yes, there's even a small sand volcano in Simrishamn.
Sweden lies on the Scandinavian peninsula of northern Europe, shared with Norway on the east side of the Scandinavian mountain chain that separates them. Here you can also find the tallest peak, Kebnekaise, in the far north. This means that Sweden gets most of its river runoff from the mountains that mostly flow down into the Gulf of Bothnia, and the longest river shared with Finland being the Torne or Tornio River. The longest river fully within Sweden, though, being the Dalälven River. Amongst these rivers is an abundance of lakes and ponds peppering the flatter hilly valleys below, the largest of these lakes being Vänern and Vättern in the south. The reason Sweden has so many of these pockety lake zones and eroded rivets is because they sit on a post-glacial rebound zone. Basically, during the Ice Age, all this land was crushed by heavy ice. But after the ice melt, like a sponge, Sweden started to slowly spring back up again. This means every year Sweden recovers on average about 4 millimeters of land from the sea. In some places, even more. This is why you might see extended piers from old homes that once used to be situated on the shore. The country has 4 general climates.
That's wild, but that's hella cool too. Oh, that's...
zones, the oceanic zone in the south by the Baltic Sea. This is also where most of the agriculture is situated. The continental zone is in the middle part of the country. And finally, the subarctic in the north just above that. These areas have the highest forest concentration in the country. Also, the peaks of the mountains are classified as tundra. The top 15% of Sweden lies just north of the Arctic Circle, where the coldest temperatures and highest snowfall happens. Otherwise, in the south, they might not even get any snow at all in the winter. Just cold, depressing rain. Numbers.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I'd love to go to Sweden and then take and go above the Arctic Circle. I think it'd be cool to just say you've been above the Arctic Circle, but to take and even any of the Scandinavian countries there, take and go there, just travel from one side of the country to the next. Like that's...
fluctuate depending on which source you study, but somewhere around or above 60% of the country is forested, making it the second most forested country in Europe after Finland.
It's also important to note that Sweden has aprilväder, or April weather, in which,
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Pretty much anything can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the sun is finally out after 6 months of darkness. So clothes come off. We sit in the sun. Oh, whenever you see a Swede too, expect this. Facing the sun, eyes closed. And then all of a sudden a storm hits or snow comes or...
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I don't know where.
The interesting thing, though, is that Sweden in the past was kind of not much like what they are today. In fact, at the beginning of the 20th century, much of Scandinavia was struggling with widespread poverty.
However, much like Germany's Wirtschaftswunder, they had the Rekordåren, in which Sweden's economy bursted with now industries and innovation.
And today you have the largest economy and most powerful nation in Northern Europe.
To explain a little bit more on the way Sweden takes what it has and flourishes, here's Noah. He's back!
Well, here we are. Once again, let's get to it. Despite having lush green lands, only about 7% of the country is arable. Therefore, agriculture isn't exactly their main focus. Today, much of Sweden's open market economy is heavily based on exports, especially in the timber and mining sectors. The largest mine in Kiruna is actually so large they are currently in the process of moving the town and residents to make more mines. This is how Sweden in the 20th century became the world's 6th largest iron ore exporter and 3rd largest stainless steel exporter. And of course, lumber. The Swedes love trees so much that a long time ago during famine times, they would put crushed tree bark into their rye bread, which was actually good because the bark had lots of minerals and fiber. Go figure. The lumber industry plays a huge role in their world.
Wait. So they actually put... That's crazy. I've never heard... Like, I know things being lean and stuff like that, but putting tree bark in your... That's wow. It makes sense though. I mean, you got to make stuff that's as filling as possible. So that's still just knowing that's a thing. That's wild. I love that chair. Gonna say that right now. I love that chair that is showing.
world-renowned furniture commerce. We've all heard of IKEA having over 450 stores in about 60 countries. IKEA. I actually studied that in design school.
Is that true, Noah?
That is true. Not that I do it, but here we are. You might be familiar with other Swedish companies like Electrolux, Ericsson, H&M, Saab, Scania, Spotify, and of course the largest domestic company and only one on the Fortune 500 list, Volvo. Great cars, I might say. And that is that. Until we meet again.
Thank you, Noah.
Now, going off of business talk, domestically, Sweden does have a pretty complex system when it comes to taxes that plays into their fiscal structure.
As of 2021, their individual tax rates range from about 32% to 52% based on income bracket margins. And that's not even including other factors like corporate value added taxes, which can be up to 25%.
When you add them, you get the second highest total tax revenue behind Denmark as a share of its country's income.
Yeah, that's, you guys kind of have high taxes.
Well, we also have healthcare.
And good schools.
And good roads.
We get free food, roads.
Roads! In any case, another interesting thing about Sweden is its wildlife. And with that, here's Gary Harlow to explain.
Guess who's back? As a Nordic country, Sweden is obviously a place full of cold climate animals. In fact, they have the third highest number of their national animal, the moose, or the Eurasian elk, after Russia and Canada. There's so many moose that they actually have to hunt around 100,000 every year to maintain population control. Killing your national animal because there's too many? Go Sweden! There are 30 national parks and nature preserves.
Funny how for conservation purposes and population control they have to hunt. They can say the word hunt to some folks and they get immediately just butthurt.
Prediction zones, and the most famous being in the North Lapland areas where reindeer, muskox, grey owls and brown bears can be spotted roaming freely. Fun fact, reindeer have climate adapted feet in the summer. Their spongy foot pads are more exposed, which help with traction. But in winter, the pads shrink and the hoof is exposed, which helps cut into the ice when moving. Finally,
Oh, that's pretty cool. And just so anybody that might have heard of like, nothing to do with guns, is people that, animal rights people and protect animals. But, just because it's their environment, that mean it won't come into human environment. And humans have been around for hundreds, for quite a while now, so.
Sweden is one of the few places in the world with a real taxidermised whale. The mouth used to be open for visitors to walk into, but it was closed off to the public because a couple was caught having sex in it. Speaking of making babies, I made one myself. Here's a photo of my daughter. She's beautiful.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, I remember the first meal I had in Sweden was reindeer meatballs. You guys love your reindeer. What's your favorite dishes in Sweden?
It probably is reindeer meatballs. Yeah.
I would say salmon. Grilled in the summer, oven baked in the winter.
Oh yeah, and you guys know fika, right? Yeah, fika. It's funny because coffee was actually banned from Sweden like 5 times in the 1700s, but that's another story. To explain a little bit more about fika and the food, here's Johan and Rikard. All right, guys, well, this is fika, and to explain, here is Johan.
So in Sweden, fika is a huge tradition. It's something you do daily. It's a part of a workday break where you kind of like gather, you sit down, and you have coffee. Historically, it's been that 7 types of cookies minimum, plus cinnamon rolls and cardamom rolls, and then pastries such as princess cakes and other things. Every day, but not necessarily this many sorts. I wanted to give you a cross section of what it could be. So, and then the most famous on the bottom would be the princess cake.
So if I'm going to try some, I have to have some.
Okay, I'm going to say this. Outside of the U.S., everybody does breaks and like tea times and stuff like that. Anything that they can have a break in whatever you're doing for that day, whether you're working or whatever, yeah, y'all do it a lot better than we do. That's for dang sure. A lot tastier too, probably.
Marzipan. So many layers.
I know.
Wow.
Hello there, my name is Dick and I'm here to talk about some of the food. We have kroppkakor or palt, depending on if you are from the north or the south. Sill, or as you will call it, herring. We have reindeer, pea soup, cauliflower soup, surströmming or sour herring.
Okay, so I want to eat the surströmming or surströmming, but the thing about it is like there's videos on how to properly eat it. You see all these idiots that take and pop it open and try to touch their tongue, and it's like you're just a dumbass. I want to try to eat it, how it would normally be eaten when people opening it in buckets of water and yeah, stuff like that. I do want to try it, just for the simple fact of trying.
Reindeer, pea soup, cauliflower soup, surströmming or sour herring, but eat at your own risk. All of these foods can be eaten at the traditional smörgåsbord or smörgåsbord, basically a Swedish.
I did not realize a smorgasbord was a. I didn't realize that was Swedish buffet. Like I didn't learn something new every day. Quite a few things
buffet.
Sometimes.
We also have Kalles or Charles caviar. It's a Swedish style of smoked cod roe, not that super expensive. And of course we have knäckebröd! And the traditional national dish of Sweden, Swedish tacos. Over to some drinks from Sweden. We have akvavit or flavored caraway liquor, julmust on Christmas, and påskmust on Easter. Glögg, we have glögg. And of course my personal favorite, punch. It's made by the mixing of spirits like arak, brandy or rum with arak tea with some sugar and water. Very sweet, very strong and very nice.
Thank you, Johan and Rikard. Oh yeah, you guys also have something about like the alcohol in Sweden. Can you guys explain? What is that?
It's called the Systembolaget, which is like the Swedish system of selling heavily regulated alcohol at state-owned stores at set prices.
So you can be 18 and go to a bar to get liquor, but you can't buy it at a store until you're 20.
Correct.
Logic, you know.
Logic, yeah.
The way it goes is that Norwegian people go to Sweden to buy alcohol, Swedish people go to Denmark to buy alcohol, and Danish people go to Germany to buy alcohol.
You guys all have a system.
Yeah, we have a system for cheap alcohol.
So there's probably a bunch of 16-year-olds taking a ferry over to Denmark.
The ferry itself is a party.
I've been on that ferry. I've been on that ferry with my mom between Helsingborg and Helsingør. Oh, and a funny story, I was told when potatoes were introduced to Sweden, it was kind of like this.
What are these things? Well, obviously, liquor.
And that's how aquavit was born, supposedly. Oh, what's that thing about candy on Saturdays? Explain, Carolina.
Lördagsgodis. You get to eat candy on Saturdays. So when we were kids, we got a little amount of money. We got to run to the store and pick our favorite candy. It's amazing. Best in the world. I mean, yes, good ingredients. When you come here, pretty much half the ingredients of American candy is illegal in Sweden. So.
Yeah, we do that. Well, on that note, we've talked a lot about some of your small little traditions. Let's explain a little bit more in...
Dude, their style of video for stuff is so entertaining.
I asked geography Johan to explain Swedish people and what they're like, and he described it something like this. A Swedish person is pretty reserved. They will definitely help you, but probably won't take the immediate initiative to help you. The way I see it, it's kind of like, oh no, I hope I don't fall. Oh, I'm falling. Oh, and I dropped my wallet. And I got the results of the test back. I definitely have breast cancer. Can you help me? Or...
Oh, I'm sorry. Was I supposed to help you?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Also, what are some other kind of taboos in Swedish culture? What do you think?
I guess when you get on the bus, if there is another available seat and you go sit next to someone, don't do that. Just don't.
And don't have too much eye contact in general.
Preferably none.
Explain, what is logom and jantelo?
It's a law that basically tells you that don't think you're better than anyone. It's like, don't tell people that you got good grades. Just get them and move on.
But still, you know, kind of let them see it on you.
Yeah, it's definitely based on status.
Lagom is this word that does not exist in English, and it basically means not too much, not too little, just the perfect amount. I would say that a Swedish person is generally intelligent. Is that full of myself saying that?
Nah, it's just a result of our educational system.
That's right.
But part of your culture, jantelo, you're not allowed to do that, right?
Well, we're not allowed to brag, no, but now we're in America, so...
Well, that was a discussion. Any case, let's break down the...
So you can't be too braggadocious, but you... That's kind of confusing, to be honest with you, but I get what they're saying. You know, you're not really, just because you did well doesn't mean you're really anything special. Move on.
Population of Sweden.
Sweden has a population of about 10.25 million and has one of the oldest populations in the world at about 41 years of age on average. About 75% of the country claims to be ethnically Swedish, and this is where things get a little complicated. For the remaining 25%, the Swedish government doesn't have any official statistical data on foreign background, but what we do know is that of these people, about 2 million of them were born abroad, and about 600,000 were born in Sweden as second generation with foreign parents. We also know that as of 2020, due to the refugee crisis, the largest immigrant communities had origins mostly from Syria and Iraq, which surpassed Finland and Poland in the 21st century for the largest foreign-born communities.
Yeah, we'll talk about the refugee thing later. But in the meantime,
Sweden uses the Swedish krona as its currency.
And we use the type C and F plug outlets, and we drive on the right side of the road. But we used to drive on the left side until September 3rd, 1967.
When the högertrafiksomläggningen was instituted.
and it was a crazy time. People were all confused and jamming into each other. In Sweden, the official language is, shocker, Swedish.
But the funny thing is, even though Swedish originated and has pretty much always been spoken natively in Sweden, Swedish actually only became official in the country in 2009.
Yeah, they kept kind of arguing about it. It was like,
No, it might be seen as more difficult for international issues. It might be seen as discriminatory, maybe, for those who don't speak Swedish. God!
So let's break this down. The country is called Sweden. What the do you think people should speak in Sweden?
And that sounds...
Oh, that's hilarious. I'm going to tell you right now, you live in any country whatsoever, and your country has a language like most people speak, regardless of outside influences, people coming in. Having an official language is not discriminatory. That's self-identification, which people have been doing through the ages. Like, it's what sets you apart from the rest of the world. It's not a bad thing. We're not meant to be homogenous. Just saying. Just all get along. But we've got our differences. It's what makes the world a beautiful place. Jesus. Discriminatory. I hate that word. Most time it's overused and for stupid ass
Swedish
reasons.
became the official language of Sweden.
we've explained this before, but the three Scandinavian countries can all more or less understand each other. If you learn one, you can pretty much kind of communicate with the others. It's just, when they hear Danish, it's like,
Oh, hey, Denmark. Interesting.
And the interesting thing is that the Swedish language has pitches.
Here's Geography Marcus to explain a little bit more.
So yeah, Swedish is a very hard language to learn. We also have pitch dialect. Some words look and are pronounced exactly the same but have different meanings. So the word plan, it can mean a plan, like having a great plan. It can also mean pitch, like a football pitch, fotbollsplan. Banan, which means banana, but if you pronounce it banan, it means the track.
Thank you, Marcus.
In any case, on top of that, there are also 5 protected languages in Sweden. Finnish, Menkal, Sami, Romani, and Yiddish.
Also, Sweden has a lot of regional accents.
If she spoke her native language right now, or...
You don't even say dialect, you say language.
Native dialect, I wouldn't understand a word.
Say the most difficult southern Swedish thing you can say.
Okay, this is not my accent, okay? Disclaimer. Det är nämnt men tradigt och köra rulleball.
It is easy but difficult to drive a roller coaster.
Wheelbarrow, but that was really good.
Right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. You thought wheelbarrow was roller coaster. Whoa! In any case, Christianity was introduced in the 9th century. Today, most Swedes, regardless of their level of religious devotion or lack thereof, are at least registered with the Swedish Lutheran Church.
And like the Danes and Norwegians, they have their confirmation ceremonies at age 14 or 15.
In old times, ancient Swedes and the Norse people followed the Asatru religion. Where Thor, Odin, Loki, all of them were from.
Otherwise, Sweden is a constitutional monarchy, although they are mostly seen as just figurehead celebrities with almost no actual legislative power.
And today, the royal family is actually French descended.
For what it's worth, being the largest of the Scandinavian countries, Sweden has a lot on its plate.
In general, most people would say that the system works. Yes, we do have one of the highest life expectancies in the world at over 82 years.
People get paid to go to schools they are accepted in.
Healthcare is free for people under 18. Dental is free for anyone under 23.
Otherwise, there are price caps for medical and pharmaceutical services, and they are usually cheap.
However, for the population, there is a bit of a shortage in medical facilities, and like most state-subsidized healthcare systems, wait times can be an issue sometimes, and they follow the 0-30-90-90 rule. This rule states that a person cannot wait more than 90 days to see a specialist and 90 days after diagnosis to receive surgery unless it is deemed an emergency. This means that the worst case scenario, potentially, it could take almost half a year to get treated.
This is one reason why 1 out of...
It's funny because with insurance here in the U.S., you take and go see your doctor first. They refer you to a specialist. And sometimes it can take a while to see your doctor or your specialist. So, outside of emergency reasons, it can take a minute here too. We tried setting up a checkup appointment with our kids' doctors. our kid's doctor, and it's a 3.5 month wait. So, but even for like to try to get them tested to see if they had COVID, they're like, oh yeah, we don't have anything available for like, can you come in? And it was 3 weeks from now. I'm like, bro, we're trying to see if they got COVID. What are you talking about? So we had to take them to the emergency room. They didn't have COVID, thankfully, but it was like, been seeing our kids since they're little. What is this kind of garbage?
Out of 10 Swedes actually prefer private insurance, which was, made available in 2010 rather than relying on universal healthcare system.
Otherwise, we aren't going to fully sugarcoat this episode. Everyone knows that Sweden has seen quite a few drastic changes in the past decade or so. During the 2014-15 refugee crisis, Sweden saw a wave of asylum seekers, mostly from Syria and Iraq.
Obviously, this unexpected influx in such a short time, barely allowing the new immigrants time to integrate, kind of played out in many ways that made international news.
Now, this is where the narrative kind of steps on thin ice, because you want to be seen as compassionate, but you also can't avoid the fact that statistically problems that quiet Sweden had never really seen before obviously kind of started to arise. We've seen the news features, riots, multiple cities, crime rising, but at the same time, you also want to be seen as compassionate, but without sidestepping the issues. So the question was, how?
Well, it's not an easy question to answer.
So, I don't know, what do you guys think of that whole situation of the drama?
You can see it as either win-win or lose-lose in many ways, because if you're completely against taking in immigrants, you're basically considered a racist. And if you're trying to turn a blind eye to the fact that, crime has risen a lot the last years, then that's not great either. So I think this is a fairly new problem, and it takes some time to really figure it out.
This is interesting because it's one of those sayings people, oh, they're seeking asylum. Well, under the UN law, number one, Syria and Iraq, it's quite a distance from Sweden. And under UN, for asylum seekers, the next closest country. Something tells me Sweden isn't exactly the next closest country that's safe for Iraq or Syria. So the people that are there, that are pissed, in my opinion, have every right to be so. Not saying these people don't deserve asylum. Not saying that whatsoever, because many due to the conflicts that happened there, they need help. They need asylum. Otherwise, they go back. They get sent back. They could be killed. Like, there's no two ways about it. But you go by protocols first. There's a reason why laws exist, and people think because laws exist, you taking and applying the law, well, then that law is racist. That's not how that fucking works. You take and try to go to these countries illegally, or try to claim asylum, and you try to go there without any kind of paperwork or whatsoever, you're getting thrown in jail, because that's how laws work. I don't know why people can't grasp that concept. And people go, oh, people were nomadic and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but there's always been some sort of boundary, and people can move in or take and come. Even in ancient times, people take and move into a territory owned by somebody else, and you can get killed. It happened. Like, this is not a foreign, this shouldn't be a foreign concept to folks. You're just looking through history.
It's difficult.
And kind of a discussion of how to help people, integrate into the society in general.
Swedish society.
I think integration is keyword.
Half the people are going to argue for all the benefits of opening our country up and helping people, and those are huge as well.
Yeah. See, this is kind of part of the complication of Sweden. There's always like a dichotomy of ethics and consequences within their story. For example, they've been neutral, or at least on paper, for 200 years, yet that neutrality has always kind of been tested throughout the time.
In World War I, our choice not to intervene pretty much costed us the chance to integrate the Åland Islands.
And in World War II, Sweden took almost all of Denmark's Jewish refugees. However, they did trade with Nazi Germany and let them use the railroad.
But it's like, what other choice did they have when they just witnessed and saw Denmark getting demolished and attacked and occupied in 6 hours? It's like, do you stay neutral yet technically cooperate, or fight back with no chance and lose everything? So many heavy choices with no simple answers. Well, that was fantastic and uplifting.
In any case, we must move on. One thing Sweden definitely does actually feel uplifted by would be their heavy involvement in sports.
And with that, Art usually fills in for the sports part, but again, he's still on vacation with his family, so I don't know. Noah, why don't you fill in? All right, Noah, you got to be Art this time. He's gone, so,
No, you missed the do, and you go to.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Sorry, but sports in Sweden. Fun fact, they actually won a half medal at the 1900 Olympics, technically. They teamed up with Denmark in the tug-of-war event. Yes, there actually used to be a tug-of-war event in the Olympics, which does sound pretty cool. Why would you get rid of that? I go to the Olympics to do tug-of-war. That'd be pretty awesome.
You could just be your own team.
I'd watch that.
There are two sports that kind of originated in Sweden, brandball and floorball. Brandball is kind of like baseball, and floorball is basically like hockey with a ball on the floor. So the thing about Sweden is that each of their neighbors is kind of like their biggest rivals in a certain sport. And of course, we can't mention football without mentioning their biggest player, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. But depending on who you
Not mistaken, Ibrahimovic, the Zlatan Ibrahimovic, he actually signed with the MLS team for a couple of years back.
ask, many people might say that ice hockey is a national sport. In 2006, they became the first and so far only team to win both tournaments in the same calendar year, Olympics and World Championships. They're part of the Big Six that are considered the best ice hockey teams in the world, including Canada, Czechia, Finland, Russia, and the United States. That's the sports parts.
Thank you, Noah. So much culture in Sweden. Actually, if you want to learn more about it, just read The Adventures of Niels. He rides a goose around Sweden and learns some life lessons along the way or something.
With that, here's Random Hannah with culture stuff.
Hey guys, I'm back. Woo! In Sweden, you'll find that every region has its unique identity. For example, the Sami people of Lapland in the north, they have their reindeer herding, tents, and colt or yakti clothing. If you go to the south in Skåne, though, you'll find a radically different culture of glass blowing and silversmithing, stuff like that. Of course, we don't have time to dive into all the regions, but one thing you'll realize is that they all have a traditional costume, or folkdräkter. One thing you will see all over Sweden is a typical redwood farmhouse. They also have the Dalahäst, a wooden horse usually painted red with patterns. And speaking of iconic animals, Swedes actually love Donald Duck, even more than Mickey Mouse. And every year during Christmas, they show Donald Duck and his friends wish you a Merry Christmas on the TV. Sweden also has many notable individuals in the arts and literature department. And probably the most critically well known is Anders Zorn, who is commissioned to paint numerous high-profile figures. Swedes are known for their crime, fiction, drama, and literature. They love the complex, moody scenarios. Many people attribute this guy, I'm not even going to try and say his name, as the founder of modern Scandinavian crime fiction. But the #1 best-selling Swedish author of all time is actually Astrid Lindgren. You've probably heard of her Pippi Longstocking.
Oh wow! That's pretty cool. But as far as, I think the only Swedish crime thing that's made its way over here, at least that I know of because I read the books, was the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series, which was phenomenally good. Absolutely loved it. I actually loved the Swedish movies on the books that actually had the English subtitles more than the American movie. I watched the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo that Hollywood put out, and I was not impressed. I loved it. I loved the movies from Sweden better. It was so much
series. And speaking of consumable media, if you want to learn about culture, history, and geography through film, check out Filmography Now, where we talk about people like Ingmar Bergman, who is a huge influential person in the film industry, and he was from Sweden. Finally, Sweden is known for having a ton of inventions and discoveries, such as nicotine gum, the pacemaker, the 3-point seatbelt, GPS, the ultrasound, dynamite, and the Celsius temperature scale. And 4 elements on the periodic table were named after the town Ytterby. Ytterberg. I give up, guys. Too many strange vowels and sounds. And one thing you should give up on is Keith and his music segment. Take it away, Keith.
Wow, so we're finally talking about this country that I have totally not any sort of bias towards. Oh wait, hold on, I think I'm forgetting something. I hope everybody recognizes my favorite Swedish band right here. Let's talk about Sweden, shall we? Technically, Sweden doesn't have a national anthem. So they have this one song, it's called Du Gamma Du Fria. I guess it's the de facto anthem, but not the official one. There's tons of really great Swedish folk songs accompanied by the Swedish nickel harp. Kind of looks like a keyboard mixed with a violin. Who likes Strandberg guitars? I do. Just so many great guitar players. Per Nelson, greatest guitar player I think out of Sweden. There's also Yngwie Malmsteen, Ola Öglund, Michael Ackerfeldt. I don't understand why Scandinavia has produced some of the world's greatest guitar players. Anyways, Sweden has...
There's a lot of black and death metal bands that come from Sweden too, if I'm not mistaken. So...
Also a very pop-centric side. Who doesn't know ABBA? I Want to Be a Dancing Queen. ABBA won in 1974 for the Eurovision contest. Also, now ABBA's actually going to be making a new album after doing 40 years of basically nothing. Since then, Sweden has been kind of the pioneers of like electro pop and dance music. More well-known artists might be like Avicii, the Carnigans, Swedish House Mafia, Roxette.
Swedish House Mafia are freaking amazing. Avicii was too. I have to check out some of these other
Funny
cats.
thing is a lot of American pop songs were written by Swedes. Max Martin has hundreds of songs. Before I go, some of the bands that I really do enjoy are Opeth, Meshuggah, Pain of Salvation, Sabaton, there's Beardfish. I wish I could name them all. Anyways.
Did not realize all of them were from Sweden, and I've heard of all of them. Haven't listened to all of them, but I've heard of them. So I have to be checking out them since we're looking at music again on the channel.
You guys have a great one. Love y'all.
Thank you, Keith. Any music suggestions for Swedish music?
Robin. She's a great musician.
Benjamin Ingrosso is killing it.
Well, speaking of which, Carolina is a musician and an artist, and you can follow her Spotify at this link right here.
No.
Well, I will promote it. I will promote your Spotify. Don't be all Logum or Jantalo and whatever that is on me. You got to promote yourself. This is America.
So far, released 3 Swedish songs, 1 English one.
You want to promote anything? You have a website? Anything?
No.
You were in a Norwegian movie and it got an Emmy Award.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, your music has touched the world in so many ways. And another way Sweden has made its name across the world is by interacting with it. So let's move on to the friend zone.
Now, Sweden has an interesting way of dealing with the rest of the world.
They kind of have a hands-off unless really necessary approach to international conflict.
For one, their security doctrine states that they have a nonpartisan stance in regards to military alliances. However, it permits cooperation with threats against peace security with their military. Yes, Sweden has a military. Nonetheless, they joined the EU in 1995, which some criticized as being against neutrality, but Sweden decided to see it as an extension of economic activity that had already been going on with the EU, and they also hold the right to not participate in EU defense. Today, they have 79 embassies abroad on all inhabited continents. In Asia, Iraq actually has had relations way before conflict years, dating back to the 30s, when members of the royal family visited Baghdad to see King Ghazi of Iraq. In the 80s, Swedish companies opened up in Iraq, trade was developing well for a while, and after conflict years, many Iraqis chose Sweden as their destination as refugees. The USA and Canada have always been close, as the US has the largest Swedish diaspora community at over 4 million people, most heavily concentrated in Minnesota. Canada having just about 500,000 with a huge community in Manitoba. Between 1820 to 1930, about 1.3 million Swedes immigrated to the Americas, which was at that time about 1/3 of the entire country. And today, these nations not only had a close historical bond, but in almost every diplomatic measure aside from military conflict, they've cooperated. Bringing it closer to home, Sweden is actually one of the top donors of Moldova in regards to aid and development. They set a strategy of cooperation in 2007, which gives 11 million euros dedicated to good governance, economy, and rural development. Now we go even closer to the inner circle, the Nordics. Every single one of these 5 nations and their territories has an opinion about Sweden, and the gossip is heavy. Finland is, of course, really close, as for about 600 years they were actually a part of Sweden. And today, Finns are one of the largest non-Swedish communities with a protected language in pockets throughout the country. For Iceland, it's like, we're cool with them, nothing against them. They talk like our ancient Norse ancestors, but otherwise, they're totally our distant cousins. Then we get to the last 2, Denmark and Norway. Now here's the thing, each one kind of has a small historical gripe with Sweden. Denmark, as you know, has had more wars with Sweden than any 2 nations on Earth, constantly fighting over influence for Northern Europe. Norway was kind of pissed that Sweden's neutrality prevented them from intervening in war times when they thought the Swedish were like really close and Norway was even part of Sweden. This was especially evident in World War II. It was like the moment of tension. Nonetheless, at the end of the day, you cannot separate the Scandinavian trio. They just get each other too well. They share too much, they have the same general Scandinavian minds, they have that Viking blood, they are truly people of the North. After the insults have been hurled, they will probably say, okay, yeah, we love each other. Denmark and Sweden, though, will probably first hug Norway before hugging each other, but otherwise, yeah, inseparable trio.
All right.
I love, number one, the way they've went through this so far is just, with the foods, the foods, that's one of the things for me, anytime I look at any kind of video about any country, is the food. Because, I'll be honest with you, Fat Boy likes to eat. Just throwing that out there. Fat Boy likes to eat, and I like to eat. That's one of the things I always take and look at is the differences of like the what people eat culturally. And I can get down with fish, man. And reindeer, like that's a large ass cousin of the deer. Cause no, yeah, they're just bigger, but bigger antlers or racks or whatever you want to call them. But some of this other stuff, as far as the history on neutrality, I didn't realize that. I did not realize that at all. Same thing as far as like just their overall standing. Like it's really cool to take and learn a lot of this stuff.
And in conclusion, you are the Swedes. I'm going to step out, hold the flag in the background while you speak freely from the heart.
I want to say in conclusion, Sweden is a beautiful country with beautiful nature, beautiful architecture, if we haven't mentioned that just yet.
Yeah, and like we mentioned, if you meet a Swedish person, he or she might be a little I'm not sure about you, but lead on with a smile and some love, and you'll get the exact same back, I promise you.
I like that. That was good. All right, well, thank you guys so much for being in this episode.
Thank you.
And stay tuned. Switzerland is coming up next.
There we have it. Geography Now, Sweden. I love their videos. I love their style of videos because it's so informative, and it's they don't go completely in depth. It's surface level stuff, but again, it's the type of stuff that just whets your appetite. You want to learn more. I've always been fascinated with the Scandinavian countries. You got the Viking history and stuff like that, and just again, I didn't realize Sweden was neutral. I thought it, Switzerland was the only neutral country. I'm wrong. Huh. Of course, that happens a lot. Anyways, just looking at the foods, I didn't realize that so many of the bands that either I've heard of or listened to are from there. Just, I definitely want to learn a lot more. And we're going to be looking at the other Scandinavian countries as well. That being said, I hope y'all enjoyed this. I know I did. Y'all be good to each other. Love yourselves.